Welcome to the Boxing Gossip channel. Please hit subscribe if you are new. Right, we're here to talk Lamont Peterson versus Errol Spence. I'm excited for this fight for two major reasons. Firstly, this is the first big fight of 2018. The boxing schedule in 2018 is crazy good. February, March, April, May, very exciting times for boxing. January, it's been a bit of a dud, bit of a lull in January, bit of a disappointing month. This is the big fight in January. This is the fight that kicks us off for the year. I kind of feel like the new year starts in earnest. Secondly, these are fighters that I like. I like both of them. I've watched both of them fight numerous times. I have an extremely high opinion of both fighters. Whilst I do have a high opinion of both fighters, both of them I found somewhat disappointing in terms of their 2017 campaigns. Lamont Peterson, a guy I really like, aged 33, not getting any younger, had a controversial win, but a good win, a big win, against Felix Diaz in 2015. Subsequent to that, inactive for nearly 18 months. Had a good comeback win against David Avanesian for the WBA World Welterweight title in 2017, February 2017, 11 months ago. Could he use that as a springboard to get big fights, to get big activity? No. What we've unfortunately seen is Lamont Peterson once again take time out and be sat on the sidelines. One fight in 2017, no fights in 2016, only two fights in 15. He's a guy who's become inactive. He's a guy who spent some of his best years sitting on the sidelines. Very disappointing stuff. Errol Spence Jr., 22-0 with 19 KOs. 28 years old, peak of his career. One of the most exciting fighters to watch in boxing. Coming off an absolutely mega win against Kell Brook. A stoppage win over Kell Brook to become a world champion, to hold the IBF World Welterweight title. Did he use that win as a platform to superstardom? No. Again, a guy who only had one fight in 2017. A guy who had that platform and then spent the rest of the year sitting on the sidelines. Now, I don't know why these guys have been inactive. You know, I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm not saying it's their promoter's fault, etc. They may have had injuries for all I know. I haven't done my research. But disappointing for those guys to have big wins and then fade and not become active. Nevertheless, it's a very good fight and it's a high class fight. Errol Spence starts as an overwhelming favourite in this matchup. There's good reasons why. He has the higher level of form of the two. He is the far bigger man of the two. He is the far bigger puncher of the two. And there's reason to believe he's the far fresher man of the two. Peterson's had hard fights over the years. He's now 33 years old. He's not getting any younger. You've also got to question the size difference. Errol Spence, genuinely a monster welterweight. For my money, he made Kell Brook look very small at 147 pounds. And we know Kell Brook is classed as a giant at welterweight. Errol Spence is a beast at welterweight. Lamont Peterson, a guy who has spent large sections of his career fighting at lower weight classes. You know, we think back to that Amir Khan fight. We think of that as Peterson's defining moment. Possibly key to remember that that was a fight at light welterweight, super lightweight, however you want to phrase it. You know, he is not a guy with a hugely deep resume at welterweight, and you are going to assume that he is a substantially smaller man than Errol Spence. Added to that is the fact that Lamont Peterson only has a 44% KO ratio, and that actually factors in his fights at lower weight classes. So, you know, if he has a 44% KO ratio at lower weight classes up against the monster and a world-class monster like Errol Spence up at welterweight, it's unlikely Lamont Peterson is going to be able to hurt Errol Spence. Not impossible. Boxing isn't fought on paper, but it's unlikely. One of the reasons I like Lamont Peterson so much, and long-term viewers, people who tune into all my stuff will have probably heard me say this before. Lamont Peterson is genuinely a versatile fighter, and I really love it and I really respect it when fighters turn up to these kind of fights and they have so many different strings to their bow that you really don't know what type of game they are going to bring to the equation. Lamont Peterson, what's the Amir Khan fight? He becomes a pressure fighter. He becomes a stalker. He walks Amir Khan down. He roughs him up on the inside. He works him over to the body. He grinds away. He breaks him. He grinds out a win in that fashion. Then you look at the Danny Garcia fight. Now, he lost the Danny Garcia fight. It was extremely close and controversial. But let's put it this way. Lamont Peterson gave Danny Garcia fits. And he gave him fits by getting up on his toes, fighting from range, using a back foot, slick boxing approach. It was real high-class stuff. What I'm getting at is Lamont Peterson is a guy who brings very, very, very different looks to the game. You know, he is a guy who could turn up one day as a high-class stalker, presser fighter, turn up another day as a back foot mover, boxer, slickster, and he can have success at the top of the game with both styles. I always like to see that in a boxer. The question is, how is he going to implement either one of those styles against a guy like Errol Spence? Errol Spence, for me, beatable from the outside, very, very, very difficult to beat on the inside. You know, we look at that Kell Brook fight. Kell Brook had major success against Errol Spence, timing him from range, catching him from distance. When Kell Brook got sucked into the war, when Errol Spence was able to close the gap, maybe he started to pull ahead in what was a close fight. You know, can Lamont Peterson fight Errol Spence on the back foot? Can he try to do what he did to Danny Garcia to Errol Spence? I don't know. I think it is hard to beat Errol Spence by running away from him. I think it's hard to beat him. He's so big, he's going to have a significant size and range advantage over Lamont Peterson. And I think the visual impact of a far bigger man coming forward relentlessly, stalking relentlessly, throwing heavier punches relentlessly, is going to mean it's going to be very, very hard for the judges to award a decision against Lamont Peterson. Can Lamont Peterson go into the eye of the storm, meet Errol Spence head on and look to scrap it out with him like we've seen him do before, and look to sit on Errol Spence's chest and get his punches away? It is possible he could do that. It's kind of hard to work out if he'd be advised to do that, bearing in mind that he's smaller and appears to be significantly lighter handed. Peterson has shown immense durability throughout his career. He's got one stoppage loss, which was the loss to Lucas Matisse. But other than that, Peterson has been in with some very, very, very good fighters, and he's shown durability. My take is that whilst that durability will stand him in very, very good stead, I think there may be too many things against him to think that will be enough to get him through 12 rounds with Errol Spence. Age is against him, activity is against him, momentum is against him, size is against him, and the power dynamic is against him. Combining all of those things, for me, it contributes to an insurmountable cocktail that Lamont Peterson is going to have to try and defeat when he steps into the ring with Errol Spence. Now, looking at this fight, trying to work out what tactics you would employ if you were Peterson's trainer. I don't think you can advise your man, knowing that he's the smaller, older, lighter punching man, to run into the eye of the storm. So I think Lamont Peterson, at least at the start, is going to have to try and use movement, use distance, use long-range work. But I just wonder if someone who's going to be on the back foot, flicking out punches that are sort of pitty-patty punches, I just wonder if that's going to be enough to keep a guy like Errol Spence off you and to pick rounds up on the judges' scorecards. It wasn't enough to beat Danny Garcia. It wasn't enough to win multiple rounds off Danny Garcia. But Danny Garcia is a significantly smaller man than Errol Spence. I don't believe he punches anywhere as hard as Errol Spence. And I actually give Errol Spence the advantage in terms of closing down the ring, and when he's closed down the ring in terms of getting his work off on the inside. I look back to some of that work that Errol Spence landed on Kell Brook, some of those body punches, some of the techniques he looked to employ when they were up close, how he was able to sort of almost hold and hit at the same time. And I've got to say, the chips are stacked against Lamont Peterson here. Prediction, I've got to go Errol Spence by KO. I do. I think Peterson will get sucked into a war after a few rounds. He may try and use his range and his skills and his slickness, but when it becomes apparent that's not working, maybe he'll look to adapt. Maybe he'll look to go into the eye of the storm, as I said, and I just don't think he's going to be able to live with Errol Spence. Maybe if Peterson was a bit bigger, had been a bit more active, you'd give him more of a chance. He is a high-class fighter. But to me, Errol Spence, who beat Kell Brook, looked to be verging on quite special. Sure, he's still got some weaknesses from the outside. He can still be timed coming in. He maybe has some defensive frailty with long-range punches. But is Lamont Peterson really going to find a punch from distance to catch Errol Spence and to take him out? I'm afraid I think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely. Lamont Peterson is a very, very tough man. I don't rule out him making it competitive for rounds. I don't completely rule out him going the distance. But I think on the balance of probability, Errol Spence his engine is too good. The pressure is too strong for too elongated a period of time. And I think he'll find the answer to the Lamont Peterson equation. I'm going Errol Spence by knockout. Leave your comments in the section below, people. Do let me know your thoughts on this matchup. How do you see it going? Is there any upset potential? Do let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed the video, usual request, please hit the thumbs up button. Please press subscribe. And as always, do appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in. Thanks very much.